detrimental.com. Detrimental.com.
Would you please tell me your name?
My name is Tina.
How you doing, Tina?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. Why are you here today?
I'm here because I have something to say.
Came to the right place to say it. And we are the voice of the voiceless. And what I like to do is give you an opportunity to tell our viewers why you're here. First thing I like to ask, what job do you do?
So right now I work for an organization that partners with Ramsey County, and we coordinate housing for homeless families.
Okay. What is your position there?
I'm actually a manager.
Okay,
Manager.
there you go. Great to hear that. When you say you partner with, I'm seeing a little bit more, helping people. Is it individuals or it's families that you deal with?
So we coordinate housing for families, for homeless families in Ramsey County.
How's that different from individuals? How does that look?
So that's the thing that I want to talk about. There are actually three different aspects to this. There are single adults, there are youth, and then there are families. Families would be any adult with a child under the age of 18, at least one child under the age of 18.
Is the need, how do you see the need far as homelessness goes, and how does the state see the need? So what I'm asking is, being in your position, seeing families, and seeing what a family has to go through, your own personal opinion, is the family in more need of state assistance or the individual, or is it equal? What are you seeing?
What I am seeing is that maybe in most counties or most states, they see the need for single adults, and that may be because the numbers are higher. And then when they decide to look outside of single adults, they go to youth. I think families are actually forgotten, which is interesting because for families, you have adults and you have youth. So together that makes a family. However, when it comes to funding systems like helping and preventing homelessness, families are most times forgotten.
Why is that? Is it easier for them to dissect it? Do they get more money for individuals opposed to having a family? Because a family is counted as a unit, and then individuals, you can count them cumulatively. What's the purpose? What's behind that you might know that I don't know? Why is the family being missed?
I don't know. That actually kind of makes sense. I hadn't even thought about it that way. But what I will say is a good example of it is the cold weather safe space rule here in Ramsey County. Right now, they have safe places for families, for singles to go to if the weather reaches a certain temperature. And then they also have spaces for youth to go to get warmth. However, there is nothing in place for families. Right now, I also work with the shelter system, and there is shelter space. However, all the shelters in probably the state of Minnesota right now are flooded, like they're full. So there's no place for people to go. So when you have these cold nights for families, for people, for a single to have a place to go that's safe and to keep them warm, and then there's youth, yet shelters are full. Where is it for families to go? So, and there's no system in place for families at this time.
So has this conversation been talked about at tables? And have you said at tables where you've brought up these needs? And what have you heard as being a reason why the family is not looked at and the individual is more so looked at? Have you heard anything for the reasons why?
I will say I have sat at tables, and what we were told was that there are 10 rooms in a hotel in Maplewood. However, in their mind, that's 40 beds. There are not 4 beds in a room. So that's inaccurate information. And there's not really, I don't know if it was just not thought of, but there is just no space for families.
I just keep going back to the individual and so I went to a church because they have in Minneapolis, different than Ramsey County, they have a community card. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of it, but we don't have that in Ramsey County.
So in Hennepin County have a community card. So I went I went by myself to see what the process was. Mm-hmm. So I asked the lady, could I just go through the process so I can let people know or see how it is or be able to explain to the person about getting this community card, which in turn allows the individual, I said, not a family, mm-hmm. to be registered. So all they have to do is call a telephone number in order to go into a shelter, opposed to actually having to be there with this community card. Okay. And I felt as though I asked the lady, could I go through the process? She said, no, I can go through the process. And I felt when I was there that a lot of the initial entry is for demographics, specifics, so they could tally up who needs the resources and delegate it to those individuals. So it's not a case by case basis as much as it is numbers, statistics. Mm-hmm. So being that I said that, the continuum of care, can you explain that to me? And how does that affect an individual?
So when you speak about continuum of care, are you meaning the continuum of care program in Minnesota?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is more of a program to be able to monitor how things are ran. There is like the coordinated entry system that is under the umbrella of continuum of care. They have people from different aspects, different walks of life that are a part of that help try to monitor how things go. But again, like the example you just gave, it's mostly for single adults. So
right.
With that being said, families aren't being considered or counted.
And I feel like maybe the problem is the continuum of care, because it looks more so, like I said, they wanted me to sit down and ask me all these questions for statistics to see who I was, mm-hmm. So they could put me in, I guess, a database, mm-hmm. and then be able to track me. And it was again based on individuality. With when you speak on a continuum of care, you speak on you said something about coordinated entry. Mm-hmm. What is that?
So coordinated entry is a system to kind of make sure housing is more fair. At one point with subsidized housing, anybody would be able to get it, whether they truly were homeless or not. You may have a program where they knew of people and called them and said, hey, we have an opening, and they would be able to go into it. This is now a little more monitored. You actually have to be registered in this coordinated entry system. You would go on a wait list, and then once a program have a vacancy, they have to actually report to the coordinated entry system, and those housing opportunities are filled with those people that are actually in the coordinated entry system.
Who's vetting that? Who's making sure that I don't let my cousin and them get a place? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who's doing that?
So the continuum of care actually is over that. The coordinated entry system is over that. Once families or individuals are identified as homeless, they go through an assessment process, and then they go into a system. This system actually, so once openings happen, once they have openings available, there's a wait list. And that wait list is it's pooled, but it's actually by number. So it's not like Tina, Tom, Jane are on this list. They're actually numbers. So once those families are assessed, they get a individualized number.
So, assessment. How does assessment? What are they looking for? Are you looking for? What are you looking for?
They're looking to see if they would be considered HUD homeless, considered Minnesota long-term homeless, or federal long-term homeless. How long they've been homeless, how many people are in their family, whether they're single, youth, or an adult, um, and what their needs are. So there may be some families or individual that may have may need some wraparound services, may have some mental health issues, may have some issues with chemical dependency, things like that. And so they sort individuals out that way.
So let's just go back for a second and let's define homeless. Let's first define homeless. What does homeless mean via the HUD definition?
So HUD's definition of homeless is a person that is living in shelter or a place not meant for habitation, which in my opinion sucks because you have people that are couch hopping, people that are staying with friends from night to night, but because they're not staying in a place not meant for habitation, like a car or in an encampment site or something like that, or in shelter, they aren't considered homeless per HUD definition. You have families or people that do what they need to do to survive. So if they can stay at their cousin's house for the night and then go stay at a friend's house tomorrow night, they're not considered homeless when they truly are still homeless.
What's Minnesota homeless?
So Minnesota homeless was actually long-term homeless.
Long-term.
So they would have to be have changed addresses or changed their locations at least 4 times in a year, and that could actually include couch hopping. So.
Is that if I identify with that, does that give me benefits, or is that beneficial to me to say that?
So in some cases, because certain housing programs, you actually have to be HUD homeless, and then in some situations you have to be long-term homeless.
Is there another homelessness definition out there floating out that we don't know about?
It's just the 2, unless you're breaking down Minnesota and the federal definition of long-term homeless.
Because I go through homelessness too, and I think it's a touchy subject because every individual has the right to live the way they want to live. So if an individual is living in an encampment, they might not be homeless to themselves. But if for you to come in and say, "Oh, you're homeless," seems to be unkind in the sense.
I agree. I actually just had that conversation this morning with somebody because who am I to tell a person how to live? There are people that genuinely want help and want to, be in what we would consider a home. And then there are some people that an encampment site is a home. That's a community for them. I don't think that we or anybody should have a right to tell people what their definition of home should be.
So with that being said, I mean, the problem becomes the definitions in general and the system wanting to be able to earmark an individual as their definition of homeless, but the individual doesn't fit that definition, or the individual doesn't want to deal with the conditions that the shelter might offer, whether it be a time curfew, whether it might be you have to leave.
Whether it may be trauma, past traumas, maybe PTSD. There are many reasons why, you have people that don't want to necessarily go into shelter or follow what, I don't know, the government or society feels that they should have to do. But I don't know,
Just the reason I brought that up is that because it seems like the system is trying to assimilate you to answer things the correct way, like in order for you to get services. That's sort of how I see the continuum of care. It's like once I become an individual who understands the system, I say the right things to you. You in turn give me resources. I check a box. Everybody's happy. And I feel like it should be a little bit different where I'm not narrating or leading you on with these conversations to make you say things that aren't true for me to help you. But I should be able to help you, whether you're in encampment, whether you're couch surfing, whether it might be. It just seems like there's restrictions on things and nobody questions the restrictions. They just say you have to be this certain way. I come up with a lie to appease you so I can get the services because I need them, even though I know I need them, but I know that's the only way for me to deal with you. So with families being homeless and trauma, do you think that the reasons why they don't deal with families as much is because there's so many conditions when you deal with a family? Because you have to make sure the space is safe. You have to make sure you're dealing with children. So you have a lot more issues with dealing with a family opposed to dealing with the individual. So is that the complications of dealing with a family?
And I don't know, but if that's the case, then that's not fair either. Like, that's not to say we turn our backs on families because there are different dynamics to it. You're turning your back and then you're creating generational systems or situations where it continues. The problem will never get solved if that's how.
We talked a little bit off camera about the breaking up of a family, how individuals who then see the system being like you get more as an individual, and a mom saying, hey, I want to go get Section 8. I'm going to go into shelter. I'm going to have my kids stay with my aunt or have my kids stay with my cousin so I can go into shelter because I know I can get into shelter. It's going to give me, I'm going to go drop into the continuum of care. All these things are going to happen for me. Isn't that problematic by them breaking a family?
I do think that it is. I think it's kind of like how back in the day they took Black men out of the home, where a person would have to leave their children behind in order to get something. And then once they get it, and let's say they get this Section 8 voucher because they went in as a single adult and was able to get a voucher quicker, and then they move into their apartment and then they try to bring their kids in, and then there's a violation of their lease, there's a violation of their Section 8 voucher, and then they're right back in the system again when they're just trying to bring their families together. But the system has it set up where you are not paying attention to families, where a person is doing what they have to do or what they feel like they have to do to survive.
I believe that's the system in general. I see the same thing with incarceration, where, they don't look at an individual as like an individual being incarcerated. They're not looking at the individual as a family. They're looking at the individual. Well, the individual's at some particular point is coming back to his family or her family, and they need to have the support and the mechanisms, but it never really sees the family. It never looks like, it doesn't see the future as being like this individual at some particular point is going to have to come back to their family, and they have cut off all connections to the family.
Right.
So I feel like that's the problem with systems. And that's why I can fall back on my opinion that I feel like people in encampments might have it figured out, not wanting to go into the system. That doesn't make it right or make it wrong. They just don't want that disconnect or have the system dictate how they live their lives. One final question for you. Have you ever been homeless? I
have not, no. By the grace of God, I have not been homeless. I was a single mother, and I've always said that and most of the people that I work with are a paycheck or a situation away from being homeless. So.
That's scary.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the field?
I've been doing this for 10 years now.
You like it?
I love it. I love helping people.
Well,
I have a passion for single mothers because I was a single mother at one point. And the need to be the voice for people, for the voiceless. I feel like there's also a need for people like me to go in and let people feel comfortable, because you have systems that feel like when you're walking into a shelter where it seems like somebody's coming in and just taking over your life. And I want to be that. I try to be that person that let them know that I understand, and I'm gonna fight with them. And now we're a family together.
So you got a lot of you got a huge task for somebody who said he's shy.
Well, I'm not shy when I'm doing that. So,
that's good. You gotta have an advocate on your side. Okay, thank you for talking to us. We'll be right back.
I got something to say.
One time, like this. For those who hop and make your one nigga straight loony after taking one
Check it out now. Look up in the sky, it's a bird,
Dope fiend.
the master, the master. Vision, the better living, trees for breakfast.
Yes. You're on the Grill Pit. Grill Pit is the studio. I got something to say. It's the podcast. I'm SAF Mo, the prison lawyer, and I got this fine queen with me, Tina. Like, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm blessed. Yeah.
I heard your narrative. I really wanted to talk to you because the place that you worked at, and I was actually at the Salvation Army when I had my situation with them. I was bringing in a client, individual gentleman who had just got kicked out of sober living. He needed to go into a shelter. Never been through the shelter process. Fortunately for myself, I've never been homeless in the state of Minnesota or any state in general. But I never knew that it was a process to being homeless, right? It's like almost like you need to know the culture of being homeless, or it's a certain way to live of being homeless. Because it's not like you just, under my situation, I always thought that you just went in, maybe had some form of ID, they took down your information, and if it was a bed available, gave you a bed. Yeah.
So there are different processes for shelter when it comes to individuals, and then for families. I've heard of like the drop-in centers, and I've heard of like shelter bed and pay to stay and things of that nature for individuals. I've actually went to tour one of the larger shelters here in St. Paul. I do know that they have like a system that is kind of wow, but the system for families is they would call the Ramsey County shelter team. They actually have a shelter team. And if there's...
What does the team consist of?
So it's Ramsey County workers that will do like a quick assessment. They can also call United Way 211 and they'll connect them to the shelter system. But they would do a quick assessment. And if they're truly homeless, because again, if they're staying with somebody or couch hopping, and let's say they got into it with somebody and decided they needed to go, they just got to get out of there, they may not be considered homeless. So the shelter system.
What would they do from then? Would they just be like, we can't help you?
They would say, unfortunately.
So if a female or male came that had a domestic situation, they didn't have a place to go because they were in an altercation with this individual, kind of like in a mix of things, went to you guys, understanding that they're maybe not supposed to be with you guys, but ended up there, what would be your pass off or handoff?
When you're saying that, you're meaning like an individual?
I'm saying, I'm an individual coming to you by accident. Maybe I have a child with me because I just had that situation occur with one of my clients.
Okay.
And I sent her to you. I like, I got a shelter for you. Go to the shelter. And your team came up and she said, well, I've been in a domestic situation.
So if they've been in domestic situations, that's a little bit different actually, because there are domestic violence shelters here. And then they would also be able to call Day One.
Okay.
Which is a hotline as well. They would be able to put them in shelter space if they have beds available. Okay. Which is another part that sucks. If there is not a domestic situation, or if they just want to go into a regular shelter, they would call, again, 211, or they would call the Ramsey County shelter system. They would get there. If there's a wait list, then they would actually put their name on the wait list. And unfortunately, they would have to call back every Monday to keep their name active on the list.
So what are they doing during that that other time where they're waiting for the wait list. This is to get into a shelter, correct?
Yes, that's to get into shelter. So unfortunately, there are times where they have to turn people away where they just don't have anybody or have a place for them to go, which again is the part that sucks when it comes to like you have these warming stations for singles or youth. There is nothing in place for families. So they may not be able to assist them at all. We do have the shelter space, the hotel program.
Okay.
Where there are the 10 rooms that are for that space available if there is no shelter room. Right now in Ramsey County, we only have 2 major shelters that are ran by the Ramsey County Shelter System. That is the Family Service Center in Maplewood. And then there is Interfaith. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's Project Home is the name of it. And it is in St. Paul. And they can collectively hold maybe about 165 individuals. So
I'm sure that they're at capacity now, right?
they are at capacity.
And there's a waiting list. So has anyone sat down and said, because I mean the situation that I'm looking at, and I'm a pessimistic person, is that because I dealt with it where you get there, there's nothing, and people are telling you go to higher ground. Maybe they might allow you to get in, but we don't have it. So it's where the ball gets dropped, and there's like no other thing but to live in your car because there's a waiting list because I don't know the process and I didn't sign up quick enough to have a reservation.
Or I didn't call on Monday because I was dealing with a lot of other stuff and I forgot to call. And then
mental illness. I have mental illness, and I can't call on Monday because I'm too busy worrying about things that I don't have I can't organize correctly. I mean, is there any because I'm in the field that you're in, but I'm not in the field that you're in. Is there any conversation that I'm missing that's going on how to correct these little areas, or do they even see it as a problem?
I think they see it as a problem. I think right now the conversation is, again, more around singles and youth. There's not much conversation taking place with families. I actually worked at the Family Service Center. I worked at a homeless shelter for 6 years before I started doing this job. And I think that for me, that's why this job is so important, to try to get families housed as quickly as possible, to make sure they get everything that they need. So that when a housing opportunity becomes available, they're ready. Because that's another thing. Once they go into the system and they get assessed, then they have to provide documents. So they have to have their birth certificates, their social security cards for everybody, their proof of income, photo ID, things that are maybe easy for me and you to get, but for a person that's homeless and trying to find their way, who's holding on to a birth certificate?
Yeah, I mean, if you do have it, it's probably someplace that's not accessible to you at this particular moment.
Exactly.
You know, because of transportation issues. You know, I guess to clear up things, because I mean everything's not bad, but if push back, let's start the situation from beginning. What would you like to see happen, and for a family that's displaced, and what could they do early on in the situation to identify the triggers?
Well, for starters, I would definitely like to see more shelter beds for families, so that they would be able to go somewhere where they can get themselves together to get ready for that next step. I also think that the housing programs that we have available for families, I think that there should be more of a system that watches how they are housing families, because there are certain programs that are funded to provide certain services that are not providing those services. As a matter of fact, there are some programs that are out here, not only are they not providing the services, but they're also putting families in unsafe positions and possibly re-traumatizing them all over.
Can you explain that just a little bit? Like, what does that look like?
So if there is a housing program that's in a community that's not safe, yet they have openings, and then you have a family and you say, okay, well, we have this opening, do you want it? They're going to do what they need to do to survive. They're going to do what they need to do to house their family. They get in that system and then they get into that housing program and they realize, They're not helping me with my mental health needs. They're not helping me with parents in classes or teaching me, financial literacy. However, I'm every day watching people outside of my window overdose, or I'm watching shootings every day, or my kid can't walk to the bus stop because I accepted this program that is in a not so nice neighborhood, and I have one of two options: return back to homelessness or stay here.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, these are the dilemmas. That's why we're the voice of the voiceless, and we opened up this platform because I don't think that any major media outlet's going to have this conversation with you or give you as long to delineate the issues that have been occurring, and then put forth a request to try to fix these problems. Are you originally from Minnesota?
It's a long story. So I was born in Minnesota, but I was raised in Arkansas.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Which you like Arkansas?
It's sure. It's a little slower than Minnesota. So
When did you come? How long have you been up from Arkansas?
I've been back here since I was 17.
17?
Yeah, from the ages of 4 to 17, I was raised in Arkansas.
Oh, what part of Minnesota are you from? The cities?
I am from the Twin Cities.
This St. Paul area?
I'm from Minneapolis.
From Minneapolis?
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a little bit off camera about housing. I mentioned to you, we talked a little bit about harm and harm reduction. I explained to you my situation in the penitentiary, how they say they have psychology. We know psychology exists throughout all the institutions they have when it comes to criminal justice. And you would think of psychology being like, oh, they're going to help people with mental illness, but it's only it is for the institution. We talked about that.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about is, and we also talked about, I talked about reentry, how individuals get out there, they get incarcerated for selling drugs, get back and return to an environment where there's nothing but drug dealing around them. Just harm. So with that being said, the warming stations that they have, you told me that they're not for families.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What could be done? I'm thinking about like, should they start looking at turning rec centers into places for people to be temporary for?
Absolutely. And then they have schools that are now closing because they don't have enough enrollment. These schools can be turned into stations and sites for families. I think that if things are thought out and money is placed in the right areas, I think that it could be done. But again, there's a school close to here that just closed because there's not enrollment, or a school that actually is about to close at the end of this year. Those places can be turned into shelters. Again, there's 2 homeless shelters, county shelters, for families in St. Paul. This is the capital. That makes no sense.
Right. But to me, I want to say it. You're not seeing it. I want to see it. I feel like that they really don't care about the homeless family, and I think they put more incentive on a homeless individual, and that's why you see, because we talked about it. Minnesota doesn't really have a huge population of the homeless, like a Chicago would have, or California would have, or Miami might have, some of these southern states, but they do have a homeless problem.
Right, correct.
And I say the same thing about the criminal justice system, where they have enough of a problem to use some innovations to create the problem, maybe go outside the box. Mm-hmm. Like we say, maybe open up some of these schools, open up some of these rec centers, get transportation for families, actually go in before the family is becoming homeless, right. Maybe go in and do some.
Mm-hmm. Or you have these families that are like homeless, make sure there's some type of financial literacy attached to these new housing programs for them, or housing situations for them. If a family is facing eviction maybe there's a program that can be created that will say, okay, we will help you before you get to eviction court, but you have to agree to go to this class for the next 6 months, you know? I think that there are things that can be done to prevent families from entering homelessness. Unfortunately, if it happened, to make sure that they are in a better position once they get housed again so that they don't re-enter it.
Well, I want to say, like, I'm not, maybe I'm just being ignorant, but I see it being almost like corrections, where if you correct the problem, then you lose the jobs. And if you lose the jobs, then why even correct the problem? Because the jobs exist because there's a problem.
Right.
If you correct the problem too well, then the problem doesn't exist anymore. So I looked at correction institution like that, like if they actually start looking into solving the problems of why individuals come into prison, then the guards wouldn't have a job. Nobody really wants to talk about that. So do you see the reason why? I mean, like something simplex is opening up a school. You know, I understand that you have to have some protections because you're dealing with families, but why haven't that conversation been started, knowing that there's only two places that you said really one place that a family can go, two places for individuals to go who are homeless?
Well, so two places for families to go. So either Project Home or the Family Service Center for families to go.
Okay.
Unless they're experiencing some type of domestic violence.
Okay.
They can go there. But I will be the first to say, and I say it all the time, I'm okay with entering a new career field because there's no homeless situation. And I think if people are humane and think with the heart and really genuinely want to help people, then they would feel that same way.
And see, that's why I differ. I mean, maybe I have a negative attitude about everything, but I just see everything as being dollar signs, and everything. The reason why they break it down so much in those little units for individuals is because it seems to be more money attached
Absolutely.
to that individual, opposed to saying a family unit. Okay, well, we can, but the family is the problem. If you don't, we talk about community on the phone, you know, about, and the smallest unit of a nation is the family unit.
Right.
When you look into a nation, you can look into a family and a household and see how well a nation runs. So my thing would be like with this government, why wouldn't they be more concerned with the family? Not to say they're supposed to not be concerned with the individual, but if you save the family, you actually save the individual.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that. And so when you say that, an example that I would give is you have a mother with two kids, ages 17 and 15. I think the fact that there's a lack of family shelter, it would be easier for them to say, oh, okay, well, you go as a single adult, and then I have now two youth that are out here entering homelessness. That's three different paychecks. There's three different sets of dollars, you know, and that really sucks. So that may be how, you know, the government feels like it's an easier way to make.
I felt that way when I went to sign up for this community card, and how they wanted to sit down and assess me. And I feel like that initial assessment, and then bringing in these trusted partners to actually facilitate it, and then coming up with this idea, like this is how we're going to track to make sure our dollars are spent wisely, and to be fiscally sound. But at the end of the day, they missed the problem. They just, like, you know, we want to make sure we get the max for our dollars, but we don't solve the problems. But with that being said, you know, we talked a little. Well, my main thing was this when I talked to you yesterday was about how they're comfortable with sending people to slumlords. Like it's a conversation that they can have. And you're supposed to be like, oh, okay, well, he's a slumlord. Like, well, where do I sign up at? It's like they have that in existence. And I know it's a little bit off, but it's still like on point when it comes to to housing in general, where they feel like even when we talk about families, they're okay with sending them to these landlords, these slumlords, and have no problem with saying that. I mean, do you see that, or is that something that?
Well, we do see that with housing programs and people getting actual housing with like private landlords. But specifically with housing programs, there are some out here that just don't do what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And then these programs are partnered with properties that are not being policed right. They're not up to code. They are in areas where they're just not safe. And knowing that it's really difficult to put a family there, but the way the system is set up is like you have to feel that space.
But isn't there? Like, isn't there? I'm not sure if there is or isn't, but shouldn't there be like a third party or somebody who goes out? Because what I like to do with a lot of my clients is if I get a resource, like to vet that resource. So I wouldn't feel comfortable sending someone to a slumlord, nor saying I'm sending them to a slumlord, unless it was a specific situation where the only place they could actually get was with that individual, being that there might be a level 3 and it's a saturation issue, and they might have to go into a position where they might have to live with that individual, live in that housing because nobody else would give them housing, period. So I just have a problem with people purchasing houses over north and opening those houses up, and they're in the worst part of the cities, and then they expect people to live there, and it's the only place that you can go, but it's not the only place you could go. I mean, there's several different ways that we could correct that. You said that you're thinking about moving. Are you thinking about you want to stay in the state of Minnesota?
No.
Because there's a code?
No, not because of the code. It's a lot of different reasons. I think that
Are you thinking about going back down south?
it would not be the Midwest. So yeah, I guess it would be the South.
What about the West Coast?
East Coast? I've never even thought to go to the East Coast.
Or the West Coast?
Yeah, actually. Maybe more the East Coast, but I've never thought about going to
the West Coast.
Like, areas in the West Coast are not places I would care to visit.
Are you still going to stay in the same field?
I hope to, yes. I do have a passion for helping people. I have a passion for helping, again, single mothers in particular, but helping families. My fight against homelessness is real, so I think I would want to stay in this field.
You said initially you started off as a single mother, never was homeless though, but were you working the whole time, this 21st?
I did. I worked multiple jobs until my situation changed. So
did you have a lot of family support? How did you make that work?
At that time, I did, yes. So I actually worked in childcare, which helped me offset the cost of childcare. And then I worked in the service industry, but I did have support from my parents that they helped watch her at night when I had to work outside of childcare hours.
Now you say you do hair also.
I do.
You do everything.
Oh,
let me
tell you, I do a lot of stuff.
So did you do hair professionally, or did something you became?
I did. I am a licensed cosmetologist.
So you had all these different things, but your passion became homelessness, family homelessness. It
didn't start out that way. I actually changed careers back in 2013, and my first internship was with the Family Service Center, and from there, being one of the few staff there that looked like me, and seeing families coming in and in some people's minds, they see them as they have like a chip on their shoulder. They, they're aggressive or whatever. And I mean, I just got in from the code, and I've been out here struggling, trying to figure out how I was gonna find something for my kid. Yeah. So you have that, and to be able to talk to people. I have and then you have people that come in with trauma, right? So you have people that, I don't want you to look at my kid because I've been told that if I go in the shelter, somebody's going to do something to him, so I'm being protective because that's what a mother is supposed to do. And then you have two mothers that end up arguing or wanting to fight, and the first thing that the program wants to do is put them out, and I have taken many walks with individuals to like calm them down, to see what the root of their anger was, to remind them that they're doing this for their kids, So,
is it still very few of us in this field?
I don't think so. I think that more of us are realizing our calling when it comes to helping each other out. Mm-hmm. So, no, I think that a lot of people that are at the tables that matter don't look like us. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I think needs to change. But I think with the people that are actually dealing with clients, Did you
go to school for it? I did. Mm-hmm. Is the education different than being in the field?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I've noticed that a lot too. Like what you come about, they don't even really have an explanation. They really don't even have a curriculum that could actually explain to you how to deal with individuals, and it seems to be, by person. Yet and still, it seems to be you have to have some form of empathy or concern. You have to have this sincere caring for an individual, mm-hmm. and for you to because like you say, you have two moms, or you have individuals who are upset and frustrated. I thought most of it, where it came to me, is being actually walking a walk, actually going out there on a cold night and actually having to wait for food, or mm-hmm. wait to get housing, or have a bunch of bags. I mean, once you feel like that, and once you have people to talk to you, they seem like they're being condescending.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for me, so I didn't walk the walk, but I do know and understand pain. I understand trauma. I understand that people deep down genuinely care about their kids, you know? And I think that you have people that are in systems that feel like these people put themselves in this situation, which sucks because that's not the case. Most people do what they need to do to survive. You never know. Somebody could have just been, running from an abusive relationship, not wanting the same to happen to their kids that happened to them, So people do what they can. And I think that that's one of the things that I try to get people to understand is you have these families out here and they genuinely care about their kids. Right. They want what's best for their kids, There are some people that, may need a little extra help and a little, they may need that cheerleader to let them know you're doing a good job. I see you need a break. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I feel like this, I had a conversation with an individual last week, and he talked about rural white America and how they don't want to be responsible for whatever. I just look at it, and I had another conversation with individuals who say, if 3 individuals in the United States of America has more wealth than half the population of the country. So they can technically buy everybody a house. So when you look at the things that you look at, mm-hmm. and you try to, it's like, even if these people are not living up to their full capacity, it's still a family that needs. And then how do you let them be homeless? Right. When there's when people have a house that has more bedrooms than they could ever sleep in.
Exactly. And you can never visit in a week's time.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how does that make sense? Yeah. That's when it's so when I'm not challenged to walk. I'm just, for me, because I've never dealt with it. So sometimes it's easy for me to feel like, well, you're not doing enough. So I try to pull myself out of that and actually look at it from a standpoint of just the frustration of just having things happen one after the next, after the next, after the next. And then I had young children, and I know you have had young children. You know how they don't understand anything.
Right.
You know, it's kind of hard to explain to them what's going on. That frustration. I just don't know. I mean,
and us as parents trying to protect our kids, so we're like trying to keep them from knowing, even though I know that yesterday we were in a house and today all of our stuff is in the backseat of the car, you know.
Bags.
So I know something's going on, but then as a mother or a father trying to protect your kid, you don't want to include them in, you know, the issue. So
well, it's just even schooling. I mean, just to be living out of your car and going to school and have that be your reality, or living out of a homeless shelter and going to school and have that be your reality, and having other children live in houses, or, I mean, that has to be, you know, and sometimes children have no filters. So if they even found out about it, the other children, you know, the fact that you have no house, then, I mean, how do you deal with that as a child? I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it's just harm on top of harm on top of harm. Is there a solution for it? Is there an easy fix for this? Is there something, do we need more money? I mean, right now, at this particular point, you're talking to every politician in the state of Minnesota. What would you ask them for in order to solve your problem?
I think, well, definitely funds would help. I think that you can't expect for a person, adult, child, whatever, to go through some stuff and not have some type of trauma attached to it. So I think that us addressing mental health needs to happen at all levels. I think that when I moved into my place, I did not need to show my birth certificate. I did not have to show my social security card.
Right.
I don't understand why a homeless family would have to do all that in order to get housed.
Yeah, to me, I think the biggest thing I have with it, and I'm talking to everybody, and I mean I think what changed my life was when it came, not so much even homelessness, but just toward people. I was traveling from Minnesota to Miami, and I happened to stop in Atlanta. I was right down from Magic City, and that's when chicken and waffles was a big thing. And it just started restaurants started popping up. So I wanted some chicken and waffles. I don't get chicken and waffles, end up getting some other chicken. But I go to this restaurant. It was one of the popular restaurants downtown Atlanta. I leave out of there, and I'm getting ready to get back on the road to finish my drive to Florida. And I had just bought a brand new truck. And as I was putting the smothered chicken on the truck, it fell on the floor of the truck. Prior to me leaving out of the restaurant, there was two guys who asked me for money when I walked out. So I'm from Chicago. So the first thing I tell them is, no, get away from me, because I'm from Chicago. That's all you get. It's people homeless asking for money. I'm fed. I'm done with it. And I'm really self-absorbed at this particular time. So I walk past the guy, get to my truck, again, put the food in the truck. Food falls on the backseat of the truck. I'm pissed.
Right. New truck.
This is me, right? New truck. I'm pissed. I take the food, throw it out of the truck. When it hits the ground, these homeless guys go on the ground and start eating the food. I felt such like a piece of shit that it really woke me up. Like, what you're worrying about your truck. These people are just trying to get a meal. It really shocked me back to reality. You're like, who am I? You know, I mean, it's just like, and I think that's what it takes for individuals to sort of come out of their glass houses.
Right. And that's actually what I was just about to say. Like, it takes moments like that to make people realize, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, people are dying in prison, and I'm worried about the fact that I can't get the Popeyes and get this new chicken sandwich.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. It's like
our mentality.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's easy to get into that when when you insulate yourself from that type of situation. And again, it just happened to me recently. Like I told you, a client I was working with, he got evicted out of his sober living home, had to go into a homeless shelter, and I had to walk him through the process of being homeless, individual homeless. I would hate if it was a family being homeless, because it would be a lot more difficult. And you get to the point where I'm such a compassionate individual, I would take my own personal money and put a person up before I let them, for me to walk away from you, leave you at a place and be like, oh yeah, just make some telephone calls and maybe you get in, maybe you don't. It's like, I can't. And it's just, I feel with you too. I think with more people of color in those positions, and you get less of that, you're just stop. I get it, pull up, go out there and get a job type of attitude when it's a little bit more than that.
Right. Yeah.
You got anything else you want to say? You got anything, anybody you want to shout out? You want anything you want to say? You just want to?
No, I don't. I mean, I just feel like we should take time to think. And when we see people, don't be so quick to judge. Try to get to know a person, hear their story, and know that we all are one or two situations away from being in that same position.
I like when you said that. A lot of people are just a couple of checks away, maybe even a check, even not receiving a check away from being homeless.
And when I say that, so not even, because I used to say it like that, but now I say like we're one or two situations away from situations, because I can have a pocket full of money and my house burned down and I have nobody to go to. And, maybe I don't have a credit card, so I can't rent a room, or maybe I can't get a place because the credit's bad because I've done something stupid, and here me and my kids are with no place to go. So.
Living in your car, you know what I'm saying? Moving around, living in a car. Yeah, it was fantastic. I'm glad you came and spoke to me. I just wish that we could, maybe after we evolve our conversation, I can talk to you again another time. Maybe we can come up with some resolutions. I mean, I like the whole school or recreation, temporary, the same way they do with churches a lot of times, where churches have other churches in them, or they have other meeting areas. I mean, why can't this state start looking at like all these schools that are shutting down, these recreation centers that aren't being occupied as places for individuals to go?
I always wondered, like the Sears that when that Sears closed over in the Midway area. It never made sense to me why there was nothing done with that. And then it was at a time when it was like super cold and homelessness was at like an all-time high. It was before the pandemic and then during the pandemic, and then Kmart over off of 35 when these open buildings, open spaces.
It's many of them.
And then you have people with no place to go.
Outside in the cold, living on the sidewalk. Do you ever, this is my last question. I'm just curious. I thought about it and then I just remember when you see people on the side of the road and they're in they're just not encampments, but just asking, I work for food or whatever, I work for money, whatever. Do you ever give to those people?
I do give to those people. I also, but depends on what it is that I give. Sometimes I give money. Sometimes I may give food. Sometimes I may give them my business card. Sometimes I may give them information to enter shelter. Sometimes I may give them the number to the school system. But I do.
That's good. That's good to know, because coming from a bigger city, the homeless population is huge in Illinois. I mean, it's just crazy. And I was just talking to a bus driver. And he talked about how he would allow individuals to ride on his bus, back and forth if they were homeless or they just got kicked out of the house and stuff like that. But I always have an issue with individuals asking for money or doing. I've been a little bit different since I came up here, and since the incident in Atlanta, I do give a lot more, and I do. But it's funny now, because my daughter works at Walgreens, in Brooklyn Park, and there's a lot of individuals out there who are homeless, which is crazy. And you used to be able to give the homeless $1 now. Like you give them $1, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. You better give them $5 to $10 to $15 now. This is crazy. So with that being said, it's just great to talk to you. Hope to get back on camera with you again when we can come up with some resolutions to this situation. For anybody, you said 211 is the telephone number to call. That's a Minnesota number?
That is a Minnesota number, or they can call 1-800-291-0211.
What's that? Is that?
So that's 211.
211?
Yeah.
And 211 is for homelessness?
It is for homelessness. It actually is an informational number. So if you're having questions about how you would be able to get your rent paid, how you would be able to find homelessness, anything like that. So you can call United Way 211 for resources. So yeah.
Is that the only two numbers that you think, or is there anything else that you think they should know?
So if there are families that are trying to enter into the homeless shelters, they can call the shelter system. That telephone number is 651-266-7818.
And that's for Ramsey County?
It is.
And it's different from county to county?
It is.
Yeah, so I mean, so we're talking specific. The 211 number is statewide.
The number for resources.
But the 651 number is Ramsey County.
Correct.
And then if you are entering into any situation, what I suggest is that you contact your county, the individuals there, and have them walk you through the process, because it's not as easy. I just think the reason why I wanted to have Tina on here today is because I needed her to explain to us what the process is, because you never know. You never know. You might just be talking to someone who needs your help. And I think it's just great to know, to be able to be informational, and maybe it might help more people become empathetic to the situation.
Yeah, that is true. Just be more mindful.
Be more mindful.
More kindness.
All right. Yeah. Trauma informed. All those good terms.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're out of here. IGSTS. SAFMO. I'm signing off.
But hold up, I got something to say.